Hi, it's Bobby from Bobby's Baking Blog, and I'm introducing you to my Victorian Day cupcake. We have everything on here is edible. The cupcake itself is got a flat top on it with a little lace, like handkerchief. We got a nice little clutch purse, a hat box, and a mirror. So I'm going to show you how to put this together. Hi, alright, so I'm going to show you how to make the clutch for our Victorian purse. And I have just some gum paste here, and it doesn't matter about the color because I'm going to drape it. We're going to make two logs. It's the same premises as if you were carving a cake and doing the logs to drape like a shopping bag or a open purse. It's almost that same technique. So if you've already done that, you should be pretty good about this. The only difference is obviously we are not using cake and we're not going to do a lot of carving. So you want one of the logs to be longer than the other because the clutch is comes down at an angle. Should almost be perfect. I don't want the clutch to be too big because remember we're working on a cupcake and we have quite a few things going on there. I did not get enough of my gum paste. Let me get a little bit more. So you want to keep in mind everything is on the small side because you are working with a smaller surface. So that looks about right. So I'm going to put those two together. I'm going to take a little bit of edible glue. An egg white will work. I wouldn't do water. I don't think that would hold it very well for what we're doing here. I'm just going to kind of put it together. And then I'm going to take my Dresden tool and I'm going to pleat it. So I know you can't see what I'm doing, but I will show you exactly how it looks. You're going to bring your tool up so that you're putting these deep pleats in there. You want to come over the top and do the same thing, putting your pleats in there. So if you've ever done one of the carved cakes like I was talking about, this is the part where you would be carving it out and pleating it. And then you would put your pleats in your fondant. I will not be putting a lot of pleats in the fondant. I'm just going to follow the pleats that I made, but I'm going to be draping it, and it is of that same type of method. So you just want to make sure you get them deep enough that your fondant will pick it up. And kind of squish it in a little bit because that clutch goes in and it also brings those pleats in a little bit more. So now we have all of our pleats in. I'm going to take a thin piece of fondant that'll be big enough to drape over it. I'm not too concerned about what it looks like at the moment as far as how I've rolled it out. On a pasta machine, you would take it to a number 4. Most of the time, my gum paste is still wet enough and my fondant is still wet enough that I don't even have to use anything to seal it. So we'll see if we can do that. So we're going to act like this is a cake, and you're going to cover it the same way you almost would a square cake, working down and bringing out your bottom so that you don't get any corners pleated that you don't want pleated. Just the part of the purse that you want pleated. And just work the fondant down just the same way you would as a cake. Feeling to make sure that you've gotten everything in line. And I can see the pleats starting to come through. So I'm going to bring it down. Because it's so small, I'm going to use my pinky. It really isn't smoothers small enough for this little teeny guy. So just use your hands. If you have nails, use the balls of your fingers. I try and keep my nails as short as possible. The next thing I'm going to do is take this neat little clay tool. I think they're called color shaders. And I'm going to just kind of bring in the fondant and tuck everything in. I'm also going to go back over and just kind of feel where those pleats are and pleat them back in with the fondant here. And get that all smoothed in. I brought in the size of my clutch. Most clutches kind of have that indentation, so I'm going to do that here. I'm just working the fondant into those pleats. And making sure that they're going to show. And then I'll decide what side is going to be on the front of the cupcake. So I'm just tucking in the edges of the fondant to the purse with this color shaper. And when I say this is a neat little clay tool, it's because it came from the American Clay Company, but I've only used it on fondant and gum paste. But I love how it just kind of makes an awesome little seal there for working with small little things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my excess off. With my knife. And then I'll tidy up just a little bit. But as you can see, this is fairly simple and fun, easy project to do. You get quite a few done in a very short, period of time. So I'm just tucking in the rest. And I was right, the fondant and the gum paste were wet enough that I do not need to use any edible glue. It should hold. Alright, I'm going to put that just over there for a second. I'm going to take a little bit, a very tiny little bit, of white fondant, or gum paste, and I'm going to make the top of that clutch. And I like this one better. So you could do it a couple different ways. You could mold it yourself, or you could use any type of mold that you have. I use two different molds for each purse. I used this one for one and this one for the other. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with this little square one again. And you want to make sure, I've got a little bit too much, that it fits in there pretty nicely. So if you've ever used molds, this is about maybe a little bit bigger than a pea size, fitting in here real nice. But the closer you can get to the size of what you're molding, the less cutting you'll have to do and it'll look better. So I shouldn't have to do any cutting for this one. It fit in nice and perfect. just going to make sure it picked up all that little print. And then all I'm going to do is take a little bit of that edible glue and just a tad. I think I can probably tuck it in, and that's what I'm going to do. Nope, I got a little more than I thought, so I'll just gently cut that little excess there. Now, if it had been more than that, I probably just would have redone it smaller, but it's such a tiny amount, it's not going to matter. As my little clutch top goes flying around. Alright, so we're going to put it up there. I like the way that fits. I put a little cornstarch on my hand. I've noticed them sticking to my gum paste. So we're just going to glue that on with a tiny amount of edible glue. Make sure it's in there. And then I am going to just mark the sides just a little bit, and that is where my chain for the clutch will come in. I looked at, and you can go onto Google Images, and I just put in some Victorian purses to get some ideas. So the next thing we're going to do is dust our little purse, and then we'll add in the chain. Alright, so I petal dusted my little clutch with Sugar Flare Plum and some antique gold so that it would look a little bit aged. And now I'm just going to make a chain. I'm using a PME 1.5 tip and some off-peak consistency royal icing. And all I'm going to do is kind of make little squiggly lines to look like a chain. And because it is a chain to a purse, I know that it's going to have a lot of movement to it. It's just not going to be straight. So I'm going to add a little bit of movement to it. It's going to kind of come down the bottom of the purse. Come around. Maybe a little bit shorter up in one area. The only important thing to remember as you're making your little chain is that it needs to hook back up into that clutch area where we made those indentations so that it looks like it is coming out from the purse. And that's it. When that royal icing dries, I will color it or paint it with a fine brush and some Everclear and the antique gold to match. So now let's work on the hat, and I'll show you how I did that. So I'm just conditioning my gum paste, and I'm going to roll it. I don't want it to be too thin, so I'm going to bring it to a 0 on the pasta machine. I'm going to explain why. To get the texture that I wanted in this hat, it was actually Sydney who liked the little diamonds in my scribing tool. So I'm going to roll this up, and that's why you don't want to bring this too thin, because you're going to be rolling it pretty thin with your whatever you have that's textured like that. And I know it's hard to see now, but when you dust it, it pops right out. And we're going to take a circle cutter and cut it out. And then with the remaining gum paste, I'm going to make the top of the hat. And I'll show you how I did that. So you want to make a ball, and you want to kind of get it as seamless as possible. And then I keep losing him. I believe I used that little guy right here. This is what I made the top of the hat with, was this mold right here. And any mold that you have, any button mold, just something that has a lot of texture in it. I liked this one because it had, and I believe these are alphabet, no, these are Jewels by Jen. I'm sorry, these are Jewels by Jen molds, and I use them for a lot of things. But that's the top of my hat right there. So you just kind of want to center that in. And I went around just lightly. I don't want to take any of the form away from my little circle with the same texturing tool, so that it kind of blended right in. But you are going to be piping a little ribbon around there, and we're going to put a bow on there. I'll show you that in a second. So with a very small amount of edible glue again, and you can make edible glue with some Tylose powder and water and let it sit overnight. You'll have a strong edible glue. You could also use some gum arabic and a little bit of powdered sugar if you don't have Tylose powder. So we've got that on, and that is the top of it. And then we want to make this a little bow. Now you could make a bow on your own if you wanted to. I have this neat little impression small bow molds, and I'm going to go ahead and use those guys. So you just want to roll a ball, and you want it to be fairly small. And put enough pressure in to get your impression. Pull it out without losing anything, any of your shape. Move him to the side for a second here. And just go in and take your X-Acto knife and cut this one out. On the bow one, and I've tried so many different times, no matter how small I get my little piece of gum paste, I'm always doing cutting. So, and I think that's because of the tails. Well, I know that's because of the tails. So just know that you're going to need to come in with your X-Acto knife and cut a little bit of it out, and then go back and kind of soften your edges up a little bit. So I'm just going to cut this out. Again, another easy decoration for your cupcake that makes a huge difference. When people see these little Victorian cupcakes, they're always asking me, how did you do that? How did you do that? And if they only knew how easy it was. So I thought because so many people were enjoying them, I would share them with you. So we're going to go and dust our hat and dust our bow, and then we'll put our little ribbon around there. So you can see all the detail that popped out when I put on, I used a bronze luster dust, and now I'm just gluing the bow onto the hat like that. So all I have left is to make a little ribbon border around my hat. Alright, so now we're going to just pipe our little ribbon around here because the bow's going to have a ribbon. And we're just going to do a little beaded border with a tail. Except my tail doesn't want to let go. I'm using a circle cutter and a little acrylic cup as my cake stand for this. I couldn't find anything else that would hold it. And just like the purse chain, when this is dry, I will color it, and what I will do so that it can match my bow is I will take the Everclear and mix it with the plum dust that I did the bow in, and then I'll darken the bow in certain places where bows would look darker, like in the center where it's creased, so that it matches nicely. So you just want to go and do just a normal little border. I would not go any bigger than a 1.5 tip for this because it is so small and you don't want your border to take over your hat. But it's such a fast little decoration that adding that special touch with the royal icing just kind of makes it. That little guy just doesn't want to go in there, does he? And what you want to do is end underneath the bow. And I'll usually take a little scriber, a turkey tresser, and tuck it on in. So as soon as that's dry, we will go ahead and paint it. So I'm all set up here. I decided that to show you 2 of the 4 little accessories that are going on my cupcake. If you want to pick your own accessories and play around, that's great. But I'm going to show you how to put them on. So I'm going to start with my little hat box, and I ended up putting a blossom flower on the top. And I'm just putting some royal icing on here so that it will stand. Or not stand, so it will connect. And then I'll put my purse on. Same thing, I'm just going around the edges here. I'm not going all the way to the edge in case it decides to come spitting out at me. So, as you can see, I'm not doing this with any design or training or whatever. I'm just putting it on so it will go and stand. I'm going to put it right about here. And then I want my hat to sit in between the 2, like so. That's kind of how I did it. Maybe I'll move this up just a tad. There we go. And what I found worked best was to come around the rim a little bit, and then if I needed to, I can go in and tuck the royal icing so that you don't see it. But I want to make sure that it is attached and doesn't come off when I go to give it away. Or if you're making it for a client's party, you'd hate for your hat to come flying off. And then we'll just put our mirror on in the front. Bring him above that little crease. Just like that. And there you go. You have your Victorian Day cupcake. Thank you.